Today, we're going to go back to a classic game. GameMasters here, and I'm talking about the game of Zork, a game I grew up obsessed with, the game that inspired me to get into the world of adventure games. Zork is a classic text-only adventure game that was developed by a group of programmers at MIT in the late 1970s. The game was initially called Dungeon, with the group at MIT referring to it as Zork. Zork was their term used for an unfinished program, and the name Zork just simply sounded more unique than Dungeon, and so it stuck. Zork initially ran on the MIT's mainframe computer. The group of programmers later formed a company called Infocom and released Zork as a commercial product in 1980 on various computer platforms, your Commodore 64, Apple II, and the TRS-80. Zork quickly gained popularity among players for its interactive exploratory fiction. You could type in commands, explore pretty much anywhere, and get beyond creative, and the game understood most of what you typed in. And what it didn't understand, well, the replies back were done in quite a humorous way. This made Zork very immersive, to the point where you lost all track of time while you were playing. Zork's rich and detailed world was full of puzzles, traps, and mystery, and that also contributed to its popularity. Keep in mind, we didn't have Google or YouTube walkthroughs. We'd play, get stuck, then find other people at school that had also played it, and compare notes and try to get unstuck. Although there was this little book you could order via mail and use a highlighter that would reveal hints. The game is set in the ruins of an ancient empire known as the Great Underground Empire, or GUE, which is filled with treasures that you have to collect and stash away. The player takes on the role of an adventurer who has stumbled upon a small white house with a boarded up front door with a small mailbox nearby. Some of the challenges the player might encounter include the gates to Hades, where you need a little bell to ring just to enter it, or a delicate jeweled encrusted egg that you have to figure out how to open, or what it means when your sword begins to glow blue. And of course, there are traps and obstacles that the player must avoid or disarm, mysterious artifacts and ancient machinery that the player must figure out how to use. There's dangerous creatures like the GRUE, or the dragon, or the troll, or the cyclops. Zork features a vast underground empire with many sprawling areas to explore, including a maze of twisty little passages, underground lakes and rivers, and a labyrinth of caves. There's a tree to climb and a rainbow that you have to figure out how to navigate across. Zork is also known for its sense of humor and its numerous references to popular culture. Of course, this was back in the early 80s, so by today's pop culture standards, some of those things referenced in the game may be lost by today's newer player. The game also features a scoring system that rewards the player for discovering new areas, solving puzzles, and collecting treasures, giving players a sense of progression and achievement. But many of us that played never really paid that much attention to the overall score. It was the immersion of the adventure that kept us going back and playing it over and over. Zork was extremely popular and successful in the early days of personal computing, and it was followed by several sequels and spin-offs, and it's still considered as a classic in the interactive fiction genre, and it's still being played today by a dedicated fan base. The sequels were Zork 2, The Wizard of Frobos, Zork 3, The Dungeon Master. The spin-offs that were also set in the Zork universe were Enchanter, Sorcerer, Spellbreaker, and Wishbringer. Later there was Beyond Zork and Zork Zero, and another game called Starcross took place in the far-flung future in the year 2186 that featured a few references to various elements in the Zork mythos. Oh, and we had The Lurking Horror, kind of a Lovecraftian horror-style game that, remember back at the beginning of the video we mentioned GUE? It stood for Great Underground Empire. Okay, in The Lurking Horror, you portray a student going to GUE Tech. That's George Underwood Edwards Technology School. Well, George, along with William Flathead, founded GUE Tech. Dimwit Flathead is featured on the Zorkmit, which is the main trade of coin in Zork. Eventually, Zork got a graphical interface as we hit the 1990s, and we saw Return to Zork, Zork Nemesis, and Zork Grand Inquisitor come out. We even saw novels released in the world of Zork. I mean, this game was beyond popular for its time and laid the foundation for future adventure games and role-playing games for that matter. The rights to the Zork franchise were later acquired by Activision, and the game was re-released for modern platforms such as iOS, Android. I think it even came out on the PlayStation. The game is still considered a classic, as well as an inspiration to what even most modern games have been based upon, and Zork can still be found on downloadable apps or even played as a browser-based version all across the internet. Oh, Oh, and one last thing. One of the more deadly encounters in the game is the GRUE. If your torch or light source ever goes out, the game will tell you it is pitch black. You are likely to be eaten by a GRUE. The GRUE is never given a physical description because, well, it dwells in the dark and no one has really ever lived to tell the tale of it. I realize that this video deviated a little from my normal type, but I wanted to share a little bit of gaming history here, as it was really the game of Zork that propelled me into the world of gaming and role-playing. It is because of Zork that I got full into games like Dungeons & Dragons and Ultima and Bard's Tale, and, well, the list kind of goes on and on. Did you play Zork back in the day? Gonna cruise the internet now to check it out? I'll leave a link down in the description as to where you can play it right now, but leave me a comment down below of some of the other games that have inspired you and urged you to get into the world of gaming. And until next our paths cross, may you not get eaten by a GRUE.